Hey guys, how you going? VaulSC here. Today I'm going to talk about my latest custom infiNity ITS mission called Oblique Assault. I'm going to start out by going through how the mission actually works, and I'll explain the insight and the reasoning behind why the rules and the mechanics are there for this particular mission. It's a very simple one. We'll get into it in a minute. Then I'm going to take you through a Batrep. So this is a conjoint video, really. It covers the custom mission and the Batrep, but the Batrep will be the beta test for this mission, the first game played on it. Decided not to edit it at all after that first game. I felt that it's a really simple, straightforward mission that didn't really need any tweaking as far as I could see. But I'm really hoping that you guys download it and playtest it and try it out in your own homes and online on TTS and let me know what you think of it. In the video description, you can click on a link which will take you to my custom missions folder in Google Drive. It's right here. It also has Finish Line and Tactical Window, which are other missions I've previously made. Obviously, give them a go as well. They're all really, really good missions, but the newest one, of course, is Oblique Assault, and I've put it in my Discord channel as well under the infiNity map bags section, where you can just grab, download files. So that's looking really good. Let's have a talk about the mission itself. So this is a direct action mission. It's one where it's about primarily killing your opponent's stuff. So it's going to be similar to your firefight or your assault, but different in some really important ways. So with firefight, it's really about just killing more of your opponent's stuff than your opponent, and the margin doesn't matter. So if I kill 90 points worth of your models and you kill 91 points of my models, you get that big, cash in of a whole bunch of objective points, the big bundle. So it's first past the post. That's all that really matters. Whereas Annihilation is more about killing a lot of their troopers and keeping a lot of your ones alive. And the difference between scoring high for objective points and low for objective points is really a pretty attrition battle. It's really intensive on being cagey and sort of making sure you don't get the wrong trades. And it really is just about those categories as well. The thing I don't like about those two missions, and look, those missions are okay, they're decent, but the thing I don't like about them is that that's usually the only way to win, and if you really commit hard to the attrition game and you go on the offense and you just barely scrape across the line, well, you get a small win, and that's about all that can happen. My mission, Oblique Assault, is going to be about the decision between committing to getting a lot of objective points from killing your opponent, or trying to defend a little bit and getting across the line using the other objective point methods. So let's get into it. Oblique Assault. So this mission is going to involve communication antennas in the same way that the mission Acquisition does. Main difference being that you don't actually have to press any buttons, you just have to control the objective by having your model next to it. Your model has to be a specialist trooper, but your opponent can stop you from doing that either just by shooting your guy or having one of their own models next to the objective. The model that's preventing the scoring doesn't have to be a specialist. Interestingly though, we've got them laid out in this oblique sort of pattern. So you've got one antenna in the middle and then two in a bit of a line. So one of them 16 inches up, 12 inches from the table edge. If we just go to my scenario here, I can actually show you how this is done. So this is a picture from the side of the table. And as you can see here, if I get out the pen, you've got the central objective, and then you've got two here and here. So this one is basically 12 inches from the table edge, and then there's the other one, which is 16 inches up. And the reason it's done like this is, A, because it's different, but more importantly, because it makes the decision for table side a bit more important. Notice that this one here, there's a big wall off around here. This is all total cover. So if you're the player over on this side, getting this objective that's closer to you is easier, right? And for your opponent, they can go for these two objectives, which are kind of exposed. Because it's a mission about killing and about attrition, you might think that taking first turn is always the best bet. Well, in this case, going second means that you can actually have an advantage on grabbing the antennas if some of them are better for your table side than the others, right? So back to it. If you bring specialist troopers out and you manage to have specialist troopers in base contact with these objectives at the end of the game, and your opponent hasn't stopped you, you get a total of 2 objective points if you've captured more than your opponent. So if you've got 1, they've got 0, or if you've got 2, they've got 1, that kind of combination, you get the 2 objective points there. However, to offset that a little bit, you lose an objective point, or they gain one, I should say, if they've killed more specialists. So the interesting thing here is, if you're taking the first turn, you're trying to really whack them, rack up a lot of objective points from killing them, but you haven't really succeeded in doing that, so you're going, oh, I could just leave my specialists out in the middle of the table to try and win by objective points. It's way easier for your opponent to actually bring them all the points back their way by shooting your specialists out in the middle of the table in their last turn and putting their own ones onto the objectives for that final end of game swing. So they could actually grab 3 objective points in total there by killing the specialists you've put forward and moving their own ones out there for a total of 3 points. Quite easy to get. You gain 1 objective point for killing the designated target, just like you do in other missions, only there are no data trackers or xenotechs for this one, so there's no bonus points. It's just a singular kill 1 designated target, which kind of fits in with the theme of shooting enemy troopers, but in this case, again, it helps the player who's picking the table side. They can find a spot which is better for their designated target to hide in compared to what's available on your table side, so I think that's quite important as well. So there are the 4 objectives up for grabs which don't involve directly killing your opponent's stuff. Now the breakdown for army kills is different from firefight and from annihilation in a small way. So what you do is you add up the number of army points that you've killed from your opponent adds up the number of army points they've killed from your list, you find out who's got the most, and then you calculate the difference. So it's the differential, right? I've killed 140 points worth of your stuff, you've killed 120 points worth of my stuff. That's a 20-point difference. You have calculated that, then you go to this chart. If you've killed 0 to 50, above and beyond what your opponent's killed, you get just 1 point. 51 to 100, 2 points. 101 to 150, 3 points, and so on. Note that it's scaled in such a way that it caps out at the 250 plus, and that's how you get 6 objective points. If the game has been so one-sided in terms of attrition that you've just tabled your opponent and they've barely killed any of your stuff, and you've actually wiped out more than 250 points worth of them, they haven't, taken out anything at all on your side, you will get a total of 6 objective points, and because these are points that only one player can have, it's either only going to go one or the other way, that's mathematically enough to win the game. Even if, in some strange scenario, your opponent's killed your designated target, they've killed a specialist trooper who's barely worth anything, they've got the communication antennas, but you've wiped out everything else and you've not really lost anything but, 1 specialist trooper, they are going to, at maximum, get 4 points, you'll get 6 points, and it will be a 6-4 victory to you. So I quite like this, especially because statistically most games of infiNity result in a very narrow points difference. It's actually very rare for the difference to be above 200 kind of thing. So what you're finding is that in most games where it's been fairly tight, the difference in points will either be 0 to 50 or 51 to 100, and that'll only be worth 1 or 2 points, which is not enough to really supersede what your opponent's going to do there. I shouldn't say supersede, to overtake, I should say. So imagine that you've got the win on attrition, you've killed a little bit more than your opponent's killed. There's a difference of, say, 90, which is a pretty solid, win in terms of attrition. And you've got your 2 objective points, but you haven't bothered to kill their designated target. The stuff that you've killed doesn't include their specialists, and then they get the last laugh by moving out there with a ninja or whatever it is, grabbing the communication antenna. They've got their 2 points from that. Maybe they managed to pick off one of your specialists, they get a point from that. They did kill your designated target. So that's going to be like a 4-2 victory to your opponent, even though this mission is primarily about killing things. So there's a bit of a seesaw action there, there's a bit of balance there, and there's a bit of intrigue. The strategy for this mission is really in thinking and looking at the table and reading the play and going, right, how committed can I get to destroying my opponent? How likely is it that if I make a really full push in taking first turn, rushing up the board, that kind of thing. How much difference am I going to get there? Am I going to be trading models? Am I going to be using cheap models to kill expensive ones? And am I going to be using a big tag like a cutter or avatar to wipe out a bunch of guys, then retreat and not lose my model? If that's the case, then these objective points should be easy to grab and should win you the game. But if it's turning out to be a tight game, you're going to have to start thinking about how to get your specialist onto those objectives and protect them from your opponent shooting them, because that's really what matters. So have a read through the mission. Please play test it. Let me know how your games go. I'm in Discord for that. Would love to hear from you. Next up, let's talk about the actual game that we played testing it. So I was playing Morats. My opponent is playing Nomads. I don't have a copy of his list, but we'll sort of see what it looks like during the game. I'm running Kornak with the Raktarak Suryat Harris team. I love fitting this into as many lists as I can. So the Raktarak's great because it is a specialist to go along with Kornak, and the Suryat, of course, is the HMG making use of the link for his guns, and he has the deflector to protect them, and he's also got the tactical awareness ability to mean that they've got that little extra boost. Kornak himself has Strategos, so if this is just a rollout turn 2 kind of thing and you've got a full order pool, you can get 12 orders out of his run, and that's really quite a powerful little link team. They've got all range bands covered with that Vulcan shotgun going in there, and the light flame is very useful. Q-Drone supported by my Morat hacker in Group 2. Again, if you're not wanting to commit your Suryat to something, if you're just up against some god-awful, HMG sniper or missile launcher in a link team, and you want to be able to revive your bot if they get a crit, the Q-Drone plus Medtech's a great combination. Plus the Q-Drone's really good at defending your backline and so forth against drop troopers. One Batrep for the extra bit of smoke and close combat potential, defending deployment zone, or is useful. Then you've got the Order Battery, the OSNAT light smoke grenade launcher, really ideal for moving out the table, blocking sight lanes, and then moving your Hungries into close combat. That's why we have a couple of Gakis and a Preta. Preta's very useful for deployment zone defense with the 2-burst chain rifle, and the Gakis really save on points, but also they can be a real hassle if you're moving out, firing smoke grenades, getting the Gakis into close combat by using that zone of control aero trick. But the really interesting draw here is the Raktarak, availability 2, so we've already used one of them. The second Raktarak, because of Wildcard Trooper, unless I'm mistaken and unless I've misread this and got this incorrect, he can actually join a Hungry's link team now with the new Wildcard changes. So Raktarak goes in the link team and has a Red Fury pack in there, and this is a very cheap link team and a very fast link team, but suddenly you've got a bit of teeth at long range because you've got a guy who's effectively BS-15, 5 dice with a shotgun with good range bands. And if he comes along with the link team, you're going to be able to pick things off as you go. Little flashball spots here or cheerleaders here, and you just shred them. Then you fire the smoke grenades, run them into close combat. That can be really, really, really dangerous. Group 2, if I get the chance, the 5 orders are going to be fueled into the Krakot Red Fury. He's a great midfielder, or it might just be reviving things with the Doc. Got a slave drone in there because I want to support the Suryat as well as the Q drone. They might be on other sides of the battlefield, and Echidrons to be cheerleaders as you do. So let's dig into it. So this is the table. We've got Oblique Assault set out here, and let's have a look. Morats are going to be deployed on this side at the top. Where's my pen? And we're going to have Nomads on this other side here. So let's get into it and see what that looks like. This is a view from one of the deployment zones. So what you're looking at here is the Nomad deployment zone. This is from the Nomad table side. And this deployment zone here is from the Morat side, just looking in. So I've opted to take first turn. My opponent did the wood in the wall, but decided to go for table side, liked that, so I'm going first. We've got the R drone in the back here, just facing to just get a bit of a view of where any sort of drop troopers might land. We've got the medtech here. Because I'm planning on putting a Q drone somewhere around this area, I want to be able to revive him, but there's a helper bot further up the other side of the battlefield to support Kornak. I'm using a Vanguard model to represent the Raktarak with Red Fury. Then you've got the Hungries, so there's a Preta here, Gaki, the Osnats behind this wall. Got the Datratse there. My designated target, which I'm trying to keep safe, up the top there. Another Echidron through here. And then we'll keep moving around the deployment zone. So again, let's just point it out. So we just looked at the medtech. We've got the rack-to-rack Red Fury, Preta here, Gaki, and the link leader Osnat. So she's actually keeping the link team together with the coherency there. And you've got your Datsratze ready to move out with the smoke. Ikadron right there. Going towards the center of the table, a bit of a vanity close-up here just to show the Vanguard KE1 combi rifle is representing the rack-to-rack. So then you've got Cornac side of the table. We've got another Ikadron at the back, just watching the back line for drop troopers. This is the slave drone, able to move out and repair the Suryat if needed. Hacker is in the corner there, using obviously the repeater ranges once the Q drone drops down. Q drone is the reserve model. You've got the Suryat here, rack-to-rack, and Cornac. These guys are all prone. Just because I'm having to deploy first, I'm not really able to see what he's deploying to defend against us just yet, but I'll be able to stand up with the tactical awareness order from the Suryat and just cover these lanes here if needed. Then, of course, we've got the Red Fury Krakot upfield, planning on flanking to the left if I see a weak flank. Great thing about Morats is that they are all immune to jammers except for the remotes and the Hungries. There's a Spec Ops tournament coming up, and opponents may be using a lot of jammers, so I'm considering running some Morats for that. Another vanity photo here, the close-up of the really cool Harris Link team, which I've just recently repainted a little bit, so they're looking pretty sweet. And there's Cornac again. You can sort of see the backline where the hacker is, and the Snake ready to help out. My opponent, from his left-hand deployment on this side, we've got a camera marker, which is a Prowler Spitfire. We've got a Jaguar chain rifle, flashball spot here, transconductor. There's a Securitate, and then another Securitate over there. This is the lieutenant there. Intruder sniper with a camera marker, able to watch this very long lane and this very long lane as well, so covering a lot of the table. There's a forward observing zero there, a bandit killer hacker there. I think it's a killer hacker. There's some kind of Alguacil or something like that. There's another transductor over that side. What else we got? Looking towards the middle, so there's your intruder, just covering that long line through the middle and through to that oblique angle there. And then further up the field, we just looked at the bandit there and the zero there. We've got a zero mine layer here, so that is the mine covering this side angle, whereas the zero himself is towards the midfield. No jammers in this list, which I criticized my opponent for, but you know, it is what it is. He's just trying it out. On the extreme right hand side of the table, there is a Scott model, which is actually representing a Krakot Red Fury. It will be prone after he's finished deploying. He hasn't quite put the model together yet, so he's just proxying it with a Caledonian. Another Jaguar chain rifle, of course our flashball spot here. There's the Securitate Lieutenant and the Daktari over here, who does have a helper bot, Zonbot, further on this side of the table there. Okay. My reserve trooper is going to be this Q drone. Noticing that he's got a few angles where there are flashball spots and the like exposed, I'm gonna start my turn by assisted firing on that and then moving it up, getting some easy kills, pulling back, weathering the storm for the next turn, and then in my turn 2, pushing out with either the Osnat Dream Team with the rack-to-rack or Kernak's boys, Cornac, and just charging up the field in turn 2 to do most of the damage then is the game plan. His reserve trooper is the amazingly looking new Zond Nort bike, which I think is really, really cool. I love this model. Just because he's really enjoying this model. He's deploying it in dismounted form, where it's holding its chain rifle and the rider is separate. I think this is really cool. He's gone with the Assault Hacker profile, which I don't particularly like. I think the Spitfire profile is best, but he's trying out the Assault Hacker for this game. Really cool model. So we're starting here, my turn 1, I've got 11 orders group 1 and 3 in group 2 because he's used the command token to reduce group 2's orders by 2. I felt like this was a mistake. He opted to do this because he's worried about the position of my Red Fury Krakot on one flank, able to move up with Impetuous and 5 orders. So because he was nervous about that and he wasn't particularly worried about my Hungaries or Cornac Link team, he felt like he could defend against those. He's opted to reduce Group 2's orders. Impetuous Datsratze moves around, no trouble there, no problems. And then the Impetuous from the aforementioned Red Fury Krakot going towards the enemy Krakot up here. Of course, later on he's just going to be moving it in this direction rather than going towards the enemy Krakot, though, with Group 2's limited number of orders. So Group 2, we're using one of the 3 available to us to put assisted fire onto the Q drone. The Q drone is then going to make a rampage with a full 11 orders under its belt. Moving out, and we're going to immediately fire at this flashball spot in the distance. It's mimetism versus mimetism, assisted fire versus, cover, and 4 dice versus 1 dice, and straight away, boom, crit. Flash pulse right in the eyes. So the bot, rearing to go, is completely immobilized. Not immobilized in the sense of the immobilized rule, but is prevented from doing anything further of use for this turn, which is a bit of a kick in the teeth. I will say, though, that later on in this game I do have a fair bit of great luck, so this immediate setback here, although it was painful emotionally, I got over it and went and hid the Q-drone and tried something else. So Q-drone licking its wounds, moving over here, and it's going to cover this very long angle on the right-hand flank, and it's going to cover this very useful midfield angle here, and of course the rest of my deployment zone around the back quite tidily. So not to worry, it's only turn 1, the Q-drone is still in action, at least it's not being shot, by something that actually kills it. So thinking that that flank is still kind of weak, and considering we still have like another 9 orders, we're moving out with the Hungaries, right? So the team. Osnat in the middle, this model here with the slightly green face and up on its hind legs is actually the Preta. The other 2 crawly ones are the Agakis over the left, and of course the Rack-to-Rack Red Fury on the right. Beautiful image of them just running through the table. The Rack-to-Rack's the slow one, but everybody else is quite fast, so they're covering a lot of ground quite quickly. And what the Rack-to-Rack's doing here is he's moving up to take revenge for the Q-drone by firing at the flashball spot in the distance, shredding it this time with the bullets. I don't know why I just didn't do that first, but he does win the shootout. We can then move past that fire lane into this spot here. As he was moving through, the Preta managed to take a flash pulse, so it's been blinded, so no chain rifles for the remainder of this particular turn, unfortunately. But what we're attempting to do here now is move the Rack-to-Rack to this position beyond that door, because it will come into line of fire of that intruder covering the middle of the table. And Rack-to-Rack versus intruder is not bad, because at good range band, Unbi is 15, back down to 12 because of mimetism, range and camouflage, range and cover will cancel, it'll be 12s and 5 dice, and he'll be shooting me on maybe a 13 on 1 dice if I've got cover. But I will pop open a camo marker as well, so we'll find out what that is in a sec. So Rack-to-Rack moving in, and then there's a 0 here. Just to explain the sequence of play, the intruder and the 0 are both starting as markers. The Rack-to-Rack moves around in line of sight of both of them. My opponent declares no action, no arrow from either of them, because he's hoping I'll fail some discover checks. So I go with the discover onto the 0 initially. With the +3 bonus of being into a link team, odds are decent, and the Rack-to-Rack does discover him. So this photo is showing you the conclusion of that particular order where I'm coming into line of sight of both of them. At this point, the 0 is discovered. What I don't want to do here, tactically, is to try and discover the intruder, because if I fail that, I can't attempt again, and the intruder is just safe for the rest of the turn. What I can do in this situation, though, is I can declare a discover shoot onto the intruder now, and even if I don't discover the intruder, I can now shoot at the 0, and at least get something done there, right? Which is a really good way of doing it. So that's the reasoning for, the sequence of play there. What happens now, though, is that the intruder is really worried about being discovered. There's a maybe 50-50 or greater chance of that happening, and he just doesn't want to risk it, so he decides to go for the shot. I decide to completely ignore the 0 shots at this point, which is risky, because I'm going to take a combi rifle here. But the Rack-to-Rack firing at the intruder really have to get that done, because if I fail and the Rack-to-Rack dies, that really slows down my turn. I lose the model. The mission's very much about attrition. But more importantly, I don't get rid of the intruder, and the intruder is really locking down a big piece of the table. If I'm to move up with Cornac and crew later on, it's going to be much better if there's no intruder there, especially if he's going to stay in marker state. That'll be really painful. So the objective is really to go after him, so I'm firing all 5 dice at him. The 0, making a mistake, goes for a flash pulse as a forward observer to try and get the Rack-to-Rack and blind him, but the Rack-to-Rack's BTS 6, so not the best. What happens here is the intruder is wiped out by the 5 dice incoming from the Rack-to-Rack, as we expected. Shock just completely removes them, and then we're on our way. Although the flash pulse does go off, the Rack-to-Rack does shrug it off with his high BTS. In the following order, we actually make a mistake. The link team moves away. The Rack-to-Rack forgets that the 0 is actually still in line of sight. My opponent does as well. So we decide to agree to play it that, let's say that the Raktarak takes a guts check after passing his religious check and moves out of line of sight, and then the next order continues there. So that's how we decided to play it. I could have gone back and shot him, but I wanted to spend the orders getting into a fun position on this right-hand flank. So let's have a look at it. There's still a flashball spot over here, which is going to continue firing flashes here. So we're getting the OSNAT there to fire its combi rifle initially. After failing the combi rifle attempts, we're then going to throw down a smoke grenade where this H is etched into the pad. So a closer look. OSNAT getting out the smoke grenade launcher after failing with the combi rifle, and then we're moving forward. So you can see the play here. There it is there. Nothing at the back can see me. The Jaguar is blocked line of sight. He does have a camo marker, but if it does reveal, he could get hit by some sort of template weapon or eaten in close combat. So he's choosing not to reveal there. The Link team move in. As they move in, anything in a zone of control range is forced to do a change facing or reset, so they lose their arrow, and with the second short skill are moving into close combat with a Gaki over on this side. Actually, no, sorry, it's a Predator on this side. There's another Gaki over here which has also been blinded, but it's still capable of blowing up while blinded, so it's still a threat, and the Raktarak's hanging back. After doing this, I'm splitting the Raktarak out of the Link team and keeping just the Hungries in there. So, as you can see, one of the Gaki is standing right next to this camo marker. The camo marker is kind of holding for dear life. If it does reveal and shoots the Gaki, it could blow the Gaki up, which is not great, or it could just get shot at by my guys. What we're doing now is we're moving in with OSNAT into close combat with the Jaguar, and the Gaki, again using that zone of control arrow trick, is moving into close combat with the Transconductor Zond, and all hell is breaking loose at this point. So, taking a slight risk here, OSNAT going to make a close combat attack at the Jaguar. The Jaguar is slightly better because of martial arts level 1, but I do have the supreme advantage of that helper Hungry there, and that will allow me burst 2. So yeah, if the Jaguar wins this and kills the OSNAT, that breaks the Link team. It reduces the number of points I've got in play. I lose a regular order, and it will be much easier for the Jaguar to then beat up on the Predator. Luckily, the burst bonus really comes through, and the OSNAT wins it, manages to kill the Jaguar, and we're left with just these two models standing there at the end. Group 2's orders, after Group 1's expended, we're now moving from this original position, sorry, got that wrong. It was originally over here, moving that way, and moving the Krakot over towards the center of the table where it might be of use. Note that there's still a 0 on this side, which may move through here, so having a chest mine operational at that spot will be helpful. And that's Group 2, setting them up right there. Tactical awareness order being used to stand up with the Suryat. My opponent has a distinct lack of long-range guns, so I'm feeling a lot more confident standing up with my Suryat at this point, covering some more lines of fire defensively. He's also a bit of a beast defensively because he's got burst 2, he's got the armor, he's got cover, he's supported by a Dr. Worm nearby, so we want that. At this point, my opponent reveals that he's forgotten to place his designated target, so he puts him down there. This designated target would have gotten free shots against me, but then again, I would have been able to kill it, so just a bit of an awkward forgetting of what to do here. This is our first time playing this custom mission, kind of forgetting about placing HVTs, so just bear that in mind. Alright, so opponent turn 1. Making what I feel is a little bit of a mistake and moving out with this Krakot. My Krakot, who's the same profile, has +1 armor and bioimmunity. His one has super jump and extra speed. Decides to jump out here and actually take on the Suryat HMG, which I feel is a mistake, and taking on my Krakot at the same time, amazingly. So that means he's burst 2 versus burst 2 and burst 2 versus burst 1. Does get a bit lucky here though, and the Suryat and the Krakot here basically have a draw. Neither of them is killed because somebody passes an armor save, or they both got crits. And firing at my Krakot in the distance doesn't manage to kill him either. So interesting outcome. There he is there. So he's able to now move forward and just take me on. But because the Krakot over here passed an armor save, he's going to pass his religious check and then guts around behind the objective to come out of line of sight. So things going well for that Krakot. Over this side of things, we have a Prowler who's very carefully avoiding this Gaki, right? So he starts a marker state. He wants to move to this spot here and then pull back. And he doesn't want to shoot the Gaki because it might blow up. But the Gaki can't attack us because he's got no other guns. So Prowler firing at the Raktarak on this side. with his Spitfire no less, and then retreating over here, and the Gaki attempting an engage. So the result of this little shootout is, with the Raktarak shooting back, of course, with his Red Fury, is that the Raktarak survives by passing armor saves against the Spitfire, amazingly, and just hangs there. And the Gaki succeeds in engaging, and we're ending up with, unfortunately, the horrible situation of the you can see my opponent picking up my model to place at base contact with his Prowler, the Raktarak living, and the Prowler then engaged by a Gaki, which is the worst thing. I mean, Gakis are 4-point models. There are going to be a lot of games where they do more harm than good because they just blow up on your side of the table. But if you can play them well, they become so valuable. That's why you know, a Morat list that has that particular link team can really make use of them aggressively and defensively if you're just using them for free orders, but also in vanilla combined as well. If you're playing them really, really well in conjunction with smoke or whatever terrain you've got, they can actually be really horrific when they're just being ignored by enemy troops and they start engaging things. So there's the situation. You've got these two models out here by themselves. The Lynx team is still active, although the Raktarak's out of range now. It's a 4-man Link team. This Gaki is now engaging the Prowler, and we've got, unfortunately, this Gaki engaging that Flash Pulse. If he shoots into close combat, he might kill his own Transconductor, or he might kill my Gaki, which might then blow up. So he's in a world of pain here. We are revealing a Bandit with a light shotgun, and it's going to surprise attack into this model, and the template is going to be just enough to clip them both. So I'm going to sacrifice the Predator here. It's not going to respond, and the Link team bonuses are going to be used on the Osnat to fire back with the Combi Rifle. This is going up against the shotgun who's using surprise attack, which won't work because of a 6 sense level 2, but he will have camouflage. Now, as a first attempt here, doesn't work. The Osnat manages to counter him. The Predator shrugs off an armor save, so sadly that doesn't quite work. So after considering it for a bit, the next face-to-face roll, I fire the smoke grenade at him instead. And the point of doing this with a smoke grenade launcher is to cut him off so that if he moves models to this point, it will be within chain rifle range and the Predator will become a lot more useful. So eventually we get to a spot where the smoke template actually goes down. This is where we can bring our beautiful Zondbike into play, though, because now we can sort of slice in, and the smoke can be used to cut off lines of sight to other part of the battlefield, particularly my Raktarak, which is still active with a Red Fury. And he's going to try and move in and use his Combi Rifle to take out the Osnat. So this is what's happening. Initially coming over here where you can see the Zonnaut up the top left, just poking through that doorway, firing his Combi Rifle into the Raktarak. Again, getting extremely lucky here, passing an armor save, and the Raktarak simply goes prone, laughing his head off over here. Note that initially in the game, I got hit by a crit Flash Pulse. That was very unlucky, but over the next game round or two, I'm getting very lucky, winning face-to-face rolls, passing armor saves, so it's starting to even out quite favorably for me, actually. But he has at least removed the arrow piece here by knocking it prone. He can then come around the corner a little bit more. Note that we can slice the pie in such a way that he can actually reach the Osnat first by coming around the door, retaining cover. There's also a wound on the Predator, so it is going to die at the end of the turn. It's dogged, so it's covering this angle, but I believe the Bandit did manage to get a shot into it, especially because, you know, you're firing the smoke grenade to try and beat the Bandit's shot, but the Bandit is actually affecting two models with his shotgun, so the Predator is making an armor save there. But Zondbike coming around and firing at the Osnat, and I think eventually killing it. Then we have his Krakop moving up with Group 2, just coming behind this wall here. I think he did attempt going after the Suryat at one point, but not managing to kill it. I think it's really dangerous to take on the Suryat because the Suryat gets cover, the Krakop doesn't. The Suryat's got the +1 burst, he's got armor, he's got better ballistic skill. It's quite a tall order to really take him down, and the shock ammunition is going to do nothing from the Red Fury. So there he is trying to take him on, but that doesn't work, so he just shrinks back to the car. So there you go. The Zondnaut has managed to take down the Osnat. The Predator's going to be removed at the end of the turn. He can now go back into bike form and move somewhere else. So here he is here. He initially considered going after my Red Fury Krakop, but he has to advance a bit too close to it and will take a chest mine. So he's going to go back again. This is a picture shown of where he was considering moving to. He took that back and decided to come back around here, but there's more danger at the back as well, where there's a Gaki about to go off in close combat, which is kind of comical. Alright, so it comes back to me, Morat turn 2. So now we're going to have some fun. The link team's broken because the Osnat's down, but the Gakis are extremely impetuous now and have irregular orders. So Gaki number 1 over here, impetuous attacking into the Prowler, wins the face-to-face roll, beats him, eats him, and renders him unconscious. We can now use the irregular order on him to move over here and help our friend, which is where things start to get kind of painful. So here he is with the first irregular order. Note that you can actually avoid line of sight for a fair part of this by moving to this spot here, and then having forced those zone of control, shenanigan changes, he can now move into base contact with his Zond without being shot at, which allows us to attack the Zond with a couple of close combat hits, or even just move past it around into close combat with the bike. So Gaki goes after the bike, doesn't manage to kill the bike, and we play on. My Krakot moving around the corner to take on this particular camo marker here, which we know is a 0, so 0 is revealed. Krakot goes after him with an intuitive attack, I believe killing him with a chest mine. And then back to Group 1's orders, of which we have maybe 6 or 7 with Strategos factored in. The Osnat link team's gone, but we still have the rest of the boys, so Kornak moving out with the team. We're trying to take this guy on with a Vulcan shotgun, so coming around the corner with the Vulcan. He is in suppression fire, but you've got a Vulcan shotgun at point blank range with cover against a guy that doesn't have cover, so it's extremely advantageous for the Vulcan shotgun here, and he does get the job done. Elsewhere on the other side of the board, the other rack-to-rack standing up. He was made to be prone earlier. Now that he's standing up, he can see our designated target there. Fires it with a Red Fury, paints the wall red with blood, and we can move on with +1 objective point gained. Also moving up with my Group 2 with the Hacker, just to prepare for that third turn push of moving a Specialist into base contact with some of these objectives. My guys here, Datratzi fine, designated target okay, and Morat still out on the field, Krakot still alright. And there's the final position of my boys. We've got the Suryat in play, ready to just watch a lot of the battlefield, as is Kornak, ready to just survey the battlefield and make sure that we're not under attack through any of these angles. My opponent, turn 2 now, trying to bring in his killer hacker. So he's moving out the bandit around through here, and he's going to come after the Gakis. I can't reveal the Krakot or the rack-to-rack who's over this way, because otherwise he'll just get shot at for free by the bandit, so it's a free move around to the back line. Once the bandit does get around here, he can start going after these Gakis, which are locked in close combat with his friends. And by going in here, he's got surprise attack, he's got really good close combat stat, I believe he's got some level of martial arts, and he's got a double action close combat weapon. If I survive and take only exactly 1 wound, it'll be terrible because he blows up in the face of the bike and the bandit. But it's pretty solid, and he does win the close combat with 2 hits. I take 4 saves, I don't manage to pass 3 of them, and the Gaki's destroyed. That does allow him to move around here and fire his shotgun into close combat at the Gaki. Does kill it, and the explosion, I believe, does wreck the transconductor. But at least he's got rid of the Gakis. Then he can move around with a Zond bike. Zond bike is going after my Krakot with Red Fury, so he's able to gun him down with his rifle. But would you believe it? The Krakot actually wins with the Red Fury. So the luck of my opponent suddenly just going down the gurgler. He was having a hard time of it this entire game, but things just really are falling apart with dice. And the bike, unfortunately, is killed by a really cheeky shot from this Krakot here. He attempts to do it with his Securitate, so bringing around the combi rifle around the corner, so firing that in there. I believe that does the job, so then he comes around the corner and tries for the rack-to-rack, and I believe he does manage that as well. I can't 100% remember. I think the Krakot the rack-to-rack might have, again, passed another save. So we've got the Securitate just hanging out on the other side of this wall here, and then poking in to get some cover. He's trying to gun down the Osnat and the corpse of the Krakot here, just because he wants to get into a position where I can't bring any points back onto the board with a long-range, medikit snipe from the Dr. Worms. That's his thinking. Okay, so next turn here from Morats, moving a hacker into base contact with the middle objective as the scenario prescribes. Cornac and boys moving out with the Link team after, topping up the pool with a couple of command tokens, Echidrons from Group 2. We're moving around here. We're getting the Suryat into range of the remaining camo markers and cheerleaders, just gunning them all down with his HMG. Getting to a spot where he can also go after the bandit. He can actually go after the other Zero. He can kill the Securitate here. So it's really just the killing blow. Moving into the back line of the enemy, this guy's being shredded by HMG bullets, and then we're looking at the board edge from the side of the Nomad player. You've got a Suryat in your deployment zone, raking everybody with his HMG, getting some kills, but leaving some of them left alive. And in the final follow-up turn where he's in retreat and lost a lieutenant, we get a couple of combi rifle shots at the Suryat, and they do manage to take him down. Not Cornac though, he manages to fend off the attack from the Zero here. And that's the end of the game. So quite a one-sided one. You can sort of see how the scenario works. It's a very simple scenario. It's the kind of scenario where if you show up for your game and you and your opponent forgot to determine beforehand what mission to play, you can crank this out because even if you've got one specialist, you're still in it to win it. It is about attrition. All factions have an equal chance at it. You don't get an unfair advantage just from having jammers or symbiomates or a really good sniper or something like that. It's really about just how well you play a good game of infiNity. And interestingly, even though this mission was an absolute clobbering for Morats, we added it up, and as predicted, it's not actually a massive blowout. It's not like I got 6 objective points from that. I got something like 2 or 3 objective points from that differential at the end. I did get more communication antennas for 2. I killed more specialists for 1. I got his designated target for 1. So that's 4. And then I believe I got the number 2 category here for another 2. So that's 6 points. My opponent didn't get any, so it's a 6-0 victory for Morats under this mission. But yeah, I mean, could have been totally different. I could have failed to get a lot of stuff going in turn 1. He could have started coming back, and then it would have been quite easy for him to bring his Zeros onto that final objective at the end and grab them back. So quite keen to play this mission more in playtesting, and quite keen to hear how you guys go as well with your games. This has been Oblique Assault. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.